What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Prophecy Misfits Podcast. This is episode 381. Space Nutella. Space Nutella. I saw a comment earlier that said that they thought Nutella was a healthy version of peanut butter. It is. For the taste buds. Anyways, welcome in. This is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We get together and we watch the crazy things that are happening around the world right now. We're in these last days. Things are getting much darker, more deceptive, increasing dystopian. And we're told that this is what these days are going to look like. And we are to be watchmen. We're to pay attention, to look for these things, to make sure that we're cutting through as much of that deception as possible, which includes our own personal bias and opinions, and utilize that in order to make sure that we're not caught off guard when these things happen, and to get the warning out to people so we can share the gospel and witness Christ to as many people as we can. So if you're new, welcome in. Glad to have you here. And we do things differently around here, but it should be a fun time if you have thick skin. But yeah, so good stuff. Today is definitely going to be making sure that we're paying attention to the deception side of things for sure. We're going to be taking a look at a few of those things, but good times. Space Nutella. Fun stuff to talk about. I'm sure some of you get the reference. Some of you are probably confused. It's all good. We'll all be confused at the end of it. Either way, we got plenty of things to talk about. Latest news to just come out was apparently announcement of a 2-week ceasefire. We'll talk about that and, some of the things going on with that. Again, whenever these ceasefires are announced, they usually don't hold. We're already getting stuff that the ceasefire was declared like 2 hours ago, and there's more missiles from Iran heading over to Israel, and it just, this stuff never changes. But either way, we'll talk about that and some of the things, repercussions involved with it, possible repercussions. We also got updates when it comes to the petrodollar, some interesting things there. Satellite imagery, specifically from Planet Labs. Originally, it was the government asked them to extend release of images to 14 days. Now they're suspended indefinitely. And we'll talk about how that's for us, not actually for Iran like we're being told. So we'll talk about that. We got some interesting developments with this leaked story, quote unquote, about the airman, the U.S. airman who was down in the Iran region. So we'll talk about that. Threats from Trump, of course. Trump's going after NATO and Greenland again. Some leaked phone call recordings show that Orban is actually a Putin puppet, which is only confirming what we already knew, but still good to make sure that we have as much ammunition regarding that as possible. Taiwan opposition leader is headed to China. So, we'll talk about that. Might be something to keep an eye on for the future. We got some more updates regarding escalation with the NSPM-7 situation, so we'll talk about that. Possible cyber attack, false flag being planned for the United States, we'll see. The Nutella drifting around the Artemis. We'll talk about that situation. What else we got? Silicon sampling, which you thought AI and polls were already deceptive. Now combine them together and you got something much more deceptive. So we'll talk about that. We also got more deception when it comes to prediction markets, teaming up with mainstream media. We got an update regarding the arch that Trump wants to build in DC. We'll talk about that. We'll take a trip up to Canada regarding the C9 bill. We'll discuss that and a few other things along the way. So plenty of things to talk about. Should be interesting. Lord says ceasefire is the new timeout. Yeah, it's definitely a manipulation tactic that's been used 1,000 times over, and we'll talk about that for sure. So hopefully everybody's doing all right. I am both tired and have a headache, which is just a normal Tuesday for me, but we got things to do, so we're going to go ahead and keep on trucking. And anybody remember that with the dude with the foot sticking out? Anybody? Anyways. If you do, say something in the chat. If not, no worries. We're just going to go ahead and move on to housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
I think you're sleeping.
Housekeeping?
All right, usual spiel. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe. Get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. That's why we do this. That is the whole goal, the whole reason. If we are not doing that, then what on earth are we doing this for? I don't know. It's like war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Anyways, what is worth it is liking, sharing, and subscribing. So please do that. I told you I'm tired, so might be a little odd comedy here and there. If you guys want to, you can follow along on Rumble and Telegram as well. Rumble's a backup live streaming platform. I hate them, but we're on there because, well, they're a platform. So feel free to follow along on there if you have that. If not, there's Telegram as well. If you have Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format, I put up on there. So if you're interested, feel free to follow along on those platforms. If not, no worries. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything happening in the Wretched Watchmen sphere of things. And you'll find the latest podcasts and live streams, the announcement page, the free book to download, and all that jazz can be found there. So make sure you guys bookmark that page. Yeah, good stuff. And last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and Give, Send, Go. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, anything like that. There's no subscriptions, memberships, paywalls, or any of that type of stuff. It needs to be free. And that's what we do. And we're able to do that because of your guys' generous donations. So thank you for your support. And for those who pray as well, thank you for your prayers. The Lord definitely answers prayers. For sure. So thank you guys for your support. Appreciate it. Phyllis, Gavin, hydrate, man. If only you saw how much liquid I put down a day. I go through so many bottles of water. I drink the electrolyte stuff. It's just crazy. So hydration is definitely not a problem with me. It's, well, I'm not even going to go and I got a whole laundry list of problems. We're not even going to get into it. But thank you for your concern. I appreciate it. All right. Everybody good? You guys ready to jump into this stuff? Got some things to discuss. All right. I'm not ready. Give me 1 second. Gotta get this thing all set up over here. I'm discombobulated. There we go. Anyways. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Jalapeno is jumping. Oh, that's great stuff. All right, let's start off with this. This is the latest thing. It's worth just keeping an eye on with all the stuff going on. Again, don't believe in these ceasefire things. They never work anywhere they are implemented. Unless they're done with what they're needing to do and they're going to utilize this ceasefire in order to progress the agenda forward, which is always possible. But we'll see. But yeah, this just came out. Trump agrees 2-week ceasefire. Trump also says Iran has a workable 10-point proposal to the United States. So if you guys don't know, this is when there's some drama, theater being put on today where he put a deadline where if Iran didn't open up the strait, that he was going to basically annihilate the entire existence of Iranian people. We know that that's not going to happen, and we know Trump is just full of excrement. But either way, he put that out there, and then, of course, a couple hours prior to that, all of a sudden, there was the announcement of a 2-week ceasefire. We also saw some stuff out there where there's Iranian people lining up around power plants and stuff in Iran because that's where Trump was going to strike. And so they were using like meat shield type stuff going on over there. So depending on where you look, there's some people who are pro-Iranian that said that those were people who volunteered to go and be meat shields. And then if you look at the people who are pro-Western, pro-Trump and stuff like that, they said that they were people who were hired and or forced to stand there. What the truth is, nobody knows. Just depends on which side of the aisle you're looking at, and that's what you're going to believe. I'm going to sit here and tell you, I don't know. But either way, there was videos and images of people standing outside and surrounding the power plants. So we got that. Let's take a look. President Donald Trump said Tuesday he has agreed to suspend U.S. bombing and other attacks on bridges, power plants, and other civilian infrastructure in Iran for 2 weeks, describing that the pause as a double-sided ceasefire that depends on Tehran's immediate opening of the Strait of Hormuz. In a Truth Social post, Trump said that the decision followed direct talks with Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir, who asked him to hold off planned destructive force against the Islamic Republic. So, first pause, and first thing that we're going to take a look at when it comes to this train of deception. Again, keep an eye on deception. We talk about it a lot on this channel because it is one of the biggest things that we are dealing with in all aspects of life. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's raising kids, going to church, at school, at work, the news coming out, or just what your friends are talking about down the street. There's a ton of deception happening right now, especially since the Lord told us. And he made a very important point about it. Take heed that no one deceive you, especially in these times. And so we got to keep that in mind. So we talk about this deception in order to stay up to date. And so first things first, we get this coming out that said it was brokered between with the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Well, first things first. We got either they wanted us to see this or it was actually an accident. And this was posted by Shehbaz Sharif, the Pakistani prime minister that apparently was the mediator between these negotiations. And you can see that somebody wrote the tweet for him. And he accidentally, or they, who controls the account, accidentally posted draft Pakistan's prime minister message on X. And then it was immediately edited to remove that little statement there, which means somebody wrote it for him. Now, the first things first is we don't necessarily know who wrote it, but we do have one indicator that probably points to the fact that it was not actually somebody in Pakistan who wrote it, because why on earth would Shehbaz Sharif's own group, his own office, write Pakistan's prime minister on there? They would just write Sharif message or prime minister message, but they specifically put the country on there, which probably tells us that it was either the United States or Israel that wrote the draft and sent it to him and said, post this. And then just a few minutes afterwards, Trump posted that that he was doing the ceasefire, and then it went all across the news sphere and everything like that. So this again is just more proof that there is theater going on, that this is puppetry, that this is fake. And when we say fake, we don't mean that nobody's dying and there's not actual things happening. We need to make sure that we understand that. It just means it's orchestrated. And so when we have stuff like this, it's a pretty good indicator that that's what's happening. So we got to put that out there. That says that this ceasefire, this negotiation, which we understand that they've come out and said that they've been negotiating how many times now, and negotiators were getting killed, and negotiations fell through, and the United States says they're not going to negotiate, and then they are, and then Iran says they're not going to negotiate, and then they are, and it's just all it is manipulation and moving things around in order to progress the agenda going forward. And so having that come out, whether they want us to see it or not, was a good indicator that this is all orchestrated. And it goes on to say Israel's also agreed to participate in the 2-week ceasefire announced by Donald Trump just 90 minutes before the deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face escalated strikes on civilian infrastructure. Since the conflict began in February, Trump has reportedly issued escalation deadlines only to retract or delay them shortly before they expire. And that's where that whole thing, I don't know if people have seen this, but there's this whole thing going around called Trump Taco. I don't remember the actual acronym, but it means he always reneges. He always goes back. He always backs down. The tariff taco and all that type of stuff. He always backs down from his threats. And he's been doing this repeatedly. Again, he's announced like 13 times that the United States has won the war and that we have airspace, but yet we have United States crewmen that are getting shot down, that the war is still going on. Troops are still getting sent there. We have a ceasefire announcement. Why would we have a ceasefire announcement since Trump already announced that we won the war? Again, don't fall for the theater going on. Don't fall for the deception that's being laid out there. One of the things, and I've always said this, The first thing to die in war is the truth, but then it's also one of those things where the longer the war goes on, the less we can believe anything that comes out regarding it. Shockingly enough, the best time to actually collect real information about what's going on is the first week of a war. Then everything after that just continues to die to the point of you can't believe a thing that comes out. Like, does anybody believe any reports coming out of the Russia-Ukraine situation? No. Because the longer it goes on, the easier it is for them to throw out fake news regarding this stuff. So just keep that in mind. So it goes on to say, we received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. This was Trump that said this. It says almost all the various points of the past contention have been agreed between the United States and Iran, but a week or a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. So Trump says Iran's 10-point proposal is workable and almost all the various points have already been agreed to. So let's take a look at what these 10 points are, in case you're interested. Iran's 10-point peace plan, what's on the table and why it matters. Again, these are ones that said are workable, and most have already been agreed to. It says Iran has unveiled a 10-point proposal aimed at ending its conflict with the United States and Israel, offering to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and reduce regional tensions in exchange for sanctions, relief, and security guarantees. So if we take a look, point 1, a guarantee that Iran will not be attacked again. They always put that in these things, and it never works out. Okay, so never attacked again. Is there a deadline to that? If we go 3 different, presidents, and we go 20 years down the line, or is that still part of the deal? Can that be changed? Again, it's just one of those for show things. A permanent end to the war, not just a ceasefire. Of course, that goes along with point 1. Point 3, an end to Israeli strikes in Lebanon and against Iranian allies. Does anybody see that happening? Seriously, does anybody see that being agreed to? I don't think so. So that's going to be an interesting one to witness if it is agreed to and when that falls through, because it's going to fall through. The lifting of all U.S. sanctions on Iran. They said, I believe the clarification on this one was going back to the Bush administration. If Trump agrees to that, that's going to be an interesting one to see the response from people. Iran agreeing to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I wonder what stipulations will be added to that. That'll be interesting to see. Introduction of a $2 million fee per ship transiting Hormuz. That would be for Iran, not the United States. And we already know Iran has gained several of those fees because multiple, including a French ship, paid a $2 million fee in Chinese yuan in order to pass through. Revenue from shipping fees to be shared with Oman, which is just kind of coming out of left field, throwing Oman into that. Funds to be used for reconstruction of war-damaged infrastructure. Establishment of safe passage protocols through Hormuz, and a broader framework to end regional hostilities. Pretty interesting. The last 2, I think, are pretty interesting. Establishment of safe protocols through Hormuz. That would kind of start leaning again towards what we're talking about when it comes to reestablishing all those extraordinarily important trade lines over in the Middle East, which I believe are setting up for the Day of the Lord situation in the coming 70th week, and then a broader framework to end regional hostilities. That's when you start getting into, and I'm going to say speculative talk, because we know that there's a false peace coming. Again, there's the whole conversation and debate about when events happen, when is the peace going to happen, when is this war going to happen, when is that invasion going to happen, and stuff. We're not necessarily going to get into that when it comes to the biblical timeline of prophetic events. However, it's interesting that it's pointing towards reducing hostilities, which may indeed head towards some type of prophetic situation regarding that. So pretty interesting that those are these points that Trump has said are workable, and most have already been agreed to. Pretty interesting. So when it comes to all of this, again, I always throw it out there, the ceasefire stuff. How many ceasefires have we seen that were agreed to and immediately were shut down because stuff started flying and whatnot? This stuff happens all the time. Maybe this one will hold, maybe it won't. We don't necessarily know. I'm not going to sit here and predict anything. This stuff changes by the day. However, it is pretty apparent that some agenda is being pushed through. There's preparations for some type of agenda movement regarding all of this. Tomorrow, I have a video coming out. It's a new video that I recorded. For those who are kind of on the fence, this is a hot topic of debate, even for those who look into the conspiratorial side of things, like the Luciferian agenda and stuff like that. Of, is Iran a part of the elite club or not? Are they a part of this globalist cabal? And I recorded a video of some stuff that's worth considering when you are thinking about it, because there's a lot of people, and I'll just say it from this angle because this is probably the most prominent one for all of us here. When it comes to the church, specifically the pro-Israel side and those who watch the prophetic side of things, that they believe that there's absolutely no possible way that Iran could be a part of the globalist cabal because of the religious side of things. They hate the Jews and they want them wiped off the planet and stuff like that. And while that is true, while we understand the Islamic side of things, there's a lot of indicators that says that the leadership in Iran, even though they abide by that, are still a part of the globalist cabal, and they are puppeteered just like all the other leaders out there in the world as well. And so I'm going to show some of those. I got 5 points that I go over for you to consider. So check that out tomorrow. If you're interested, it's only about 30 minutes, I think. And maybe that'll answer some questions regarding all of that. And I'll let you know, I believe that Iran is indeed part of the globalist elite cabal. They are puppets for sure. So, all right. Bryce, all puppets. Yeah. All right. So that's that. We'll see what happens in regards to that ceasefire situation and what comes of it. Let's take a look at what's going on with the petrodollar side of things, as far as the de-dollarization and the how do I want to word that? The fact that many countries are ditching U.S. treasuries and backing away from the dollar. So we got this. The Iran war just broke the petrodollar. This is for the first time since 1996. Global central banks now hold more gold than U.S. government bonds. Pretty significant. It says the virtuous loop that has seen America underwrite stability in the Middle East in exchange for Gulf states recycling their dollar revenues into the U.S. Treasury has been broken. The arrangement was elegant in its circularity. Oil consumers paid dollars for energy. Those dollars flowed to Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, and from there back to Washington's debt. The U.S.-Israeli war with Iran has fractured this agreement or arrangement at both ends. To start with the importing side, since the strike on Iran on February 28th, foreign central banks have been net sellers of treasuries for 5 consecutive weeks. Holdings at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York has dropped by roughly $82 billion to $2.7 trillion, the lowest level since 2012. So holdings of these treasuries at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York has dropped roughly $82 billion to $2.7 trillion, and the lowest since 2012. What happened several years prior to 2012 was the financial reset. Pretty interesting. The rates desk at Bank of America offered a dry summary. Foreign official sectors are now selling U.S. Treasury bonds, and the mechanism is straightforward. Turkey, India, Thailand, and other oil importing nations are caught in a brutal arithmetic. Oil priced in U.S. dollars has surged past $100 a barrel, which I believe it just hit a record. It's like 140 something it hit. 144, somewhere around there. So it hit a record. And their currencies have weakened against the greenback, which means the higher that the price goes up of oil, which is valued in U.S. petrodollar, and the less value that foreign currencies continue to go down, which means there's a much bigger divide. So those countries are paying much more for a barrel of oil, which means they're going to be looking for some type of avenue in order to gain their money back and then ditch the petrodollar to start buying oil in something else. And we know China has been yearning to bring in the petro yuan in order for it to make it happen. This is to limit depreciation, which would push domestic oil prices even higher, forcing either fiscal subsidies or household pain. Central banks intervene in currency markets. That requires dollars. The most liquid dollar asset any central banks hold are treasuries, so they sell, which means our gas prices go up, our consumerism goes up, and the value of the dollar goes down at the same time, which is a double hurt, because price goes up and dollar value goes down, which means you're paying double on the double that you're already paying. I hope that makes sense. It says this is not without precedent. Foreign central banks hold a record US $109 billion in treasury during the COOF pandemic in 2020, but that episode resolved quickly. The Fed deployed dollar swap lines, calm returned, and money flowed back within weeks. Every major crisis since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China's saber rattling against Taiwan in August 2022, the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank in March of 2023, the October 7th Hamas attack in Israel sent money into the treasuries, not out of them. Yields fell and the playbook worked. Which means, for those who don't necessarily know, if the treasuries were going out because of the situation with the COOF, and then everything that followed, which include the war, the Taiwan thing, the Silicon Valley collapse, the Hamas attack, all brought the treasuries back in, which means that there was a financial incentive to create chaos in the world. So for those who can't necessarily find the connection point between them, that's how that works. So they weren't ready to collapse the dollar yet. They weren't ready to move off of the global use of the dollar, which means they needed to orchestrate, they needed to cook up some events in the world which would continue to bring back U.S. treasuries in order to keep the dollar moving for the time being. So what you do is you cook up some events in the world, like some of the ones listed here. See, this is where that lower level, it doesn't necessarily get thought about side of the deception comes in, because when we look at these events, most of the world looks at them, the Russia invasion and the Hamas attack and stuff like that. You look at those and it's like, well, there's chaos in the world and things are happening and there's reasons for it. True, there's plenty of reasons for it, but also on top of that, one of the main reasons for it is the financial side of things. So not only is it causing geopolitical chaos, not only is it influxing technology for various reasons, not only is it feeding into the military-industrial complex, but it's also keeping the dollar's heartbeat alive. It's like putting it on the iron lung. It's just keeping it there to the point of not collapsing, but not becoming a power again. And that's important to understand, which means they've been holding the dollar on life support for a very long time, which means they're not ready to collapse it yet. We thought for sure that Silicon Valley Bank situation, because multiple banks followed suit, here we go. We're going to start seeing it. You saw a lot of the financial channels and you saw a lot of the podcasters and the prophecy people coming out saying that, here we go. This is that financial collapse that we were looking for. It never happened. It actually, surprisingly enough, those bank collapses in 2023, which we thought was going to be the collapse, was actually something that was keeping the dollar alive. Pretty interesting. It's not something I learned until just recently. And when I learned that, I was like, wow, I was on the opposite side of things. I thought it was actually hurting the dollar, but it was actually keeping it alive. The deception is on levels that we just don't even comprehend. I still don't technically comprehend how that works, but I do know that that's how it works. So pretty interesting to watch. This is in a normal oil shock. Rising prices generate rising revenues for Gulf producers. Petrodollars flow back into the dollar-denominated assets, including treasuries. High oil prices have historically been, paradoxically, supportive of the treasury market. The shock creates the surplus that generates demand for the bonds. This time, Gulf producers can't get their oil out. The Strait of Hormuz closure has stranded their barrels along with everyone else's. So again, we got the 2-week thing that says that they're going to open it up, but we'll see what happens. We don't necessarily know. It says Gulf states, including Kuwait, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, collectively put production at least 10 million barrels a day in March. Saudi Arabia and the UAE can export reduced volumes through alternative pipelines. For those routes, handle only about a quarter of a normal straight throughput of full capacity. Petrodollar loop requires two moving parts, dollars earned and dollars invested. Because of the strait closure, both have stopped, which means the petrodollar has been strangled. The numbers on the exporting side make the concrete. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE had a combined holding of about $300 billion in treasuries as of January. These countries are now simultaneously earning less oil revenue, spending heavily on air defense, and reviewing the investment pledges they made to Washington just a month ago. There's a longer structural story that the war is accelerating rather than creating. The shares of treasuries held by foreign investors had already fallen to around 32%, down from half in the early 2000s, which means these countries are quietly still ditching U.S. treasuries. They're selling them out. Almost every month, there's a report coming out from the U.S. Treasury Department that says that they're rebuying their own treasuries. They're rebuying their own bonds. Why? Because that's what's keeping things alive, and other countries are starting to sell them, which means the United States has to spend their own dollars on their own treasuries in order to keep the market going, in order to keep the dollar alive, because other countries are ditching out on it, which is just another indicator that the dollar continues, while it's still on life support, is still starting to dwindle towards death, which means a financial reset is coming. When? We don't know. Again, I thought the financial thing would have collapsed years ago, but I will say that while they're doing all this, the only thing that is keeping the financial system still alive is the literal hand of God. I do still firmly believe that, because everything is according to God's time, not the U.S. Department's time, not the table's time, not the Luciferians' time, not the Saudi Arabia time. It has nothing to do with their timing. Even though they feel like they're in control of this, it's actually God that's holding things back, because the financial collapse will go according to when He says it will happen. And so that's important to understand. That's why a lot of this financial stuff just doesn't make sense. That's why I think it's pointless trying to predict when this stuff is going to happen when it comes to the financial system, because I have no idea when God plans for it to happen. So central banks became net sellers in early 2025. For the first time since 1996, global central banks now hold more gold in aggregate than U.S. government bonds. These were slow-moving trends, easy to dismiss as noise. The Iran war is making them look like a signal. Something that we just saw come out into the news yesterday was the French emptied their gold supply out of the United States. I don't know if you guys saw that, but the French requested all of their gold back. The United States was unable to provide physical gold, so they gave gold certificates, which they took. France took to Switzerland and actually made more money because the price of gold went up from what they actually held, which means France made out, the United States lost gold, and the dollar just got a lot less valuable. That happened yesterday, worth noting. This is the standard reassurance is that there's no alternative to treasuries. No other market offers the depth, liquidity, and legal infrastructure that central banks require. This remains true. So they're talking about how still the best system out there for the global trade for the petrodollar is still the United States Treasury, the dollar. Well, if the dollar's barely on life support and it's still dwindling to death by the day, and that's still the best option, for those who are paying attention to the prophetic side of things, knows that some type of digital, brand new global financial infrastructure is on the way. And again, if we point to Revelation, we'll understand that that's going to be the one world economy system that will eventually be introduced according to God's timing on these things. But again, another indicator, it's kind of wrapped in something that maybe you don't necessarily fully understand, but it's still something that we need to pay attention to. If still the best system for global trade is the dollar, and the dollar is basically worthless and almost dead, that's a good indicator that the only thing that they can replace this new financial system with is something that they have planned for the future. It says the flight to quality trade that always rested on a political premise that in global crisis, the U.S. is a stabilizer or bystander, not a combatant. So again, the reason why it's been so stable and why people continue to use it for as long as they've used it is because the United States has always been one that's never really been at the center of causing a disruption with the dollar. That has changed now. The calculus changes when the U.S. itself is the belligerent, when the conflict is partly America's war, driving the oil shock, straining Gulf relationships, and generating the fiscal pressure that bond investors worried about the U.S. budget deficits. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. Kissinger's 1974 deal held through the Cold War, the Gulf Wars, the financial crisis, and the pandemic. It has not survived this. The petrodollar loop has always been a political arrangement dressed in financial clothing. Now that the politics has changed, the finance is following. Again, a very good indicator that we understand that they are prepping, that this war is not by accident, is not by happenstance, is not something that just came out of nowhere. It is something that was planned probably a long time ago. Details ironed out, specifics needed to be done, a docket of agenda was on the table and ready to go probably several years before this event took place, because this was going to be a very important shakeup to not only the geopolitical structure, not only the energy structure, not only the trade structure, but also the financial structure. And right now we're seeing a massive indicator, something that is very new for a very long time. The last time that this happened was 1996, and now we're back at it. And while we have this ceasefire announcement regarding all of this, something tells me that they're still not quite done with what needs to be accomplished. So again, this is another indicator. Is this just something that sprang out of nowhere? Or if you're a MAGA person, is this the genius of Trump, his 4D chess? No, that's all false. Trump is a puppet playing according to what he's been told by the actual people above him that know what they're doing. And obviously this has to do with building that new system when it comes into place. So I know when it comes to financial stuff, sometimes it's confusing, sometimes it's boring, sometimes you're sitting there and it's like somebody's talking pig Latin in Spanish with a Swiss accent, and you're like, I have no idea what's going on. But hopefully some of the stuff that I pointed out regarding this, these are little things that if you catch on, you'll understand that this actually points towards an orchestrated event. It points towards what the value of the dollar actually is and why the system is still there. It points to the fact that they're currently still working on getting this new financial system set up and ready to go. They're making the moves in order to introduce this one world system. And so this is pretty important. This is pretty significant regarding all of that. So I wanted to point that out to make sure we are all aware. Okay. Did I lose anybody? I hope not. I hope not. Yeah, wouldn't that be something if one of these countries requests their gold back from the United States and they get a shipment of chocolate wrapped in gold, like those gold coins? That would be funny. Anyways. Or maybe there'll be Nutella, just to keep with the theme of things. Okay. Let's go ahead and go with this. Again, more indicators of deception and trying to make sure that we are kept in the dark here, at least in the United States, in the Western world of things. Okay. All right, so satellite image company restricts Mideast content, citing the U.S. government request. And it says a major satellite imagery provider, Planet Labs, is indefinitely withholding access to imagery over Iran and the conflict region more broadly, citing a request from the United States government. This is significant. It says the decision announced in an email to customers on Saturday was a significant step in narrowing the public's visibility to what is happening in the war in the Middle East. So if you're already confused and deceived by what is going on in the Middle East, this is just going to make things worse. It says journalists and researchers often use satellite imagery to create a fuller picture of events, especially in places that are difficult to reach where information is restricted. This is how we found out that the United States bombed 2 schools and killed a whole bunch of people. This is how we found out that the radar systems in the Gulf states were completely wiped out. This is how we found out that several of the oil refineries in Iran were destroyed, was all due to the satellite imageries. Now those are being taken away, which means we're not going to be able to get visuals on any of those things. It says the Pentagon declined to comment on whether the U.S. government had requested the satellite imagery providers restrict content, which we know that they did. Planet Labs said in an email on Saturday that the U.S. government asked all satellite imagery providers to indefinitely withhold images. In a statement to the New York Times, Planet Labs said that the U.S. government request was made for safety and operational security reasons. It said it would voluntarily withhold imagery over the area indefinitely, until the conflict ends, and switch to a managed distribution of images deemed not to pose a risk to safety. So, go back a couple weeks, we covered that there was initially a 14-day release on imagery. So Planet Labs had to wait 14 days before they could release new satellite images to the customers who subscribe to it. Then now we fast forward to here, and they've changed it to indefinitely until this conflict ends, which means we're no longer getting anything from this. Now, what we're being told is this has to do with making sure that no information is being fed to Iran, that Iran cannot use this satellite imagery from Western companies like Planet Labs in order to use to strike locations in Israel and the Gulf states and so on and so forth. The only problem with that is Iran doesn't use our imagery or satellite imagery systems. Iran uses Chinese satellite imagery, which they are still currently up and running and online, feeding that information to Iran. So if it all has to do with shutting down satellite images in the West in order for safety and operational security reasons, mainly because they don't want that information getting to Iran, that doesn't make any sense because Iran doesn't even use these images for that. So who uses this imagery? Us. We do. Customers in the United States and the Western side of the world, journalists, those who report on what's going on. This has to do with information blackout to us, not to Iran, to us. They want to keep us in the dark. That's what this has to do with. So this all has to do with making sure that we're in the dark, that we're deceived, because now we can't go and look things up ourselves. Now we have to rely upon whatever the government tells us, which we know and have proven. I've lost track of how many times so far that we've proven that they have lied about 98.5% of everything involved with this war and what's going on. It's been nothing but lies. So this is, again, making sure that we're in the dark by simply going to a private company and saying, don't post this stuff anymore. Don't make sure that this information doesn't get out. But we're not an authoritarian regime. No, of course not. So again, this is about making sure that we're in the dark because Iran doesn't even use it. Then we have this. It says Trump vows to hunt down leaker, claims report exposed missing F-15 airmen to Iran. It says Trump claims a media leak revealed the existence of a second downed F-15 airman, potentially alerting Iran. Interesting, because both Trump and Hegseth came out multiple times and said that they have air superiority over Iran, and yet we continue to get told that they're shooting down United States jets. Shooting down 2 in one day. Pretty interesting how that works. And that's just what we're being told has been shot down. Again, I do not believe that the numbers that they're releasing regarding the casualty rate and the injury rate of United States military is anywhere remotely close to what they're telling us. I think it's much higher personally, but that's just based on my gut and the things that I've seen. It says Trump revealed that a massive 155 aircraft operation rescued the injured F-15 crew member who evaded capture for nearly 48 hours while hiding in a mountainous region. Also interesting that the whole story regarding this airman is actually the very opening scene of the Iron Man movie, where he was shot down and survived a weekend in Iran mountain cave until he was rescued, almost identical to what happened in the Iron Man movie. Fascinating. So President Donald Trump said that his administration is actively searching for the source of a leak that revealed one of the two crew members aboard a downed U.S. F-15E fighter jet that was still unaccounted for in Iran. They didn't know there was somebody missing until the leaker gave the information, Trump said, adding that his administration is working to identify the individual responsible. Maybe we just have to take Trump's statement at face value. Maybe Iran did know. Who knows? I'm not going to say that they did. I'm not going to say that they didn't. But again, we just got to take him at his word on that, because I think there's another angle to all of this. It says Trump warned that both the source of the leak and the journalist involved could face serious consequences if the information is not handed over. The person that said that the story will go to jail if he doesn't, he stated. He further indicated that the administration may pressure the media organization that has published the report to reveal its source, framing the issue as a matter of national security. Of course, there's national security. We're going to go after the media company that released it, and we're going to say national security, give it up or go to jail, Trump said. So, one of the things with this is not the first time that the Trump administration has gone and threatened a media company or a reporter to give up their sources. Now, for those who don't know, journalists actually have legal laws that protect sources. Unless there's something directly tying and it's verifiably, like, you can prove it, that a source was involved with a crime, the journalist is not required to give up that source. But there has been multiple times that the Trump administration has gone and threatened reporters to give up sources for things that they weren't actually connected to, because they wanted to make sure that information was not getting out. This is what authoritarian regimes do. So they're doing that again here, threatening the media company to give up their source, even though they're not legally required to, but they're threatening jail time if they don't do it. What's interesting is information came out that it was an Israeli reporter for the Times of Israel who has extremely close ties to both Netanyahu and Netanyahu's office, who is the one that leaked this information out to the public. And then as soon as this threat from Trump came out, the guy deleted all of that in order to try and protect himself. So it was actually an Israeli source that's connected to Netanyahu's office that leaked all that information out. Interesting. So is this going to be a hollow threat, and because it's an Israeli reporter that Trump's going to back off, or is he actually going to go against one of Netanyahu's reporters that has close ties to him? That's going to be something. It's going to be interesting. Yamara, can we believe anything Don says? No, not a thing. Even though that's how people operate, whatever Donald Trump says. Again, there's this one thing. I don't know if I still have it. It's interesting that you put that up. Let me see if I still have it. Because I don't think I would have deleted it because it's too funny. And it's too true. Where's that? Give me 1 second. The joys of doing things live, right? There's no way I would have gotten rid of it. Yeah, this is, how many Trump supporters does it take to change a light bulb? None. Trump just says he fixed it and they all stand around cheering in the dark. That's how most people operate. Because whatever he says, even though he changes whatever he says almost every 5 minutes. People still go along with whatever he says. That's why I say, don't believe what these government people are saying. Don't believe what the United States government is saying. Don't believe what the Israeli government is saying. Don't believe what the Iranian government is saying. Don't believe what these people are saying, because they're actors. They're just there to play a part. Sometimes they just post their own thoughts. Sometimes they're told what to post, and a lot of the time people are just posting in their place. It's not actually the people that are communicating. So, anyways, all right. Let's keep it moving, shall we? All right, so we haven't heard Greenland in a minute, and here we go. Back out into the media realm. Trump lashes at paper tiger NATO, right, while re-upping Greenland claim. Says Trump lashed out Monday at NATO allies who did not support the United States in the war in Iran and reiterated his desire to annex Greenland. Trump's remarks came ahead of the visit by the Defense Alliance's chief Mark Rutte, scheduled for later this week. Says, look, we went to NATO, Trump recalled. I didn't ask very strongly. I just said, hey, if you want to help, great. No, we will not help, Trump said he was told while saying who he spoke to. So basically, Trump went to NATO and says, give us Greenland. Help me get Greenland. And they said, no, we're not going to help you get Greenland. And so Trump was butthurt. So Trump went on to say that NATO members had actually gone out of their way not to help. The alliance, Trump said, is a paper tiger that President Vladimir Putin's not afraid of. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who Trump called a great person, is expected in Washington this week. Again, this Rutte character is a friend and an ally of Trump, and he's kind of the inside man to help cause friction between the United States and NATO, because I believe that that's something that's coming in the future, maybe in the near future, when it comes to dismantling NATO and the EU. It says, on Wednesday, we will hold talks with Trump, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, the alliance said Friday. It says, discussing his displeasure with NATO, Trump said it all began with, if you want to know the truth, Greenland. We want Greenland, Trump said. They don't want to give it to us, and I said, bye-bye. This is the leader of the United States. This is how he talks. He talks like a 5-year-old. He has the vocabulary of a 5-year-old. And this is how he presents himself. I don't know if you guys saw the thing that he put out on, I think it was Sunday, dropped an F-bomb publicly on a social post. And it's like, my word, man. Says Trump also criticized other traditional NATO allies, including South Korea, Australia, and Japan, for not assisting with the war. So on top of that, we also have Trump coming out, not only insulting NATO, not only causing more public fracture there, and again showing his indicator that he wants to obtain Greenland, which we know is a part of the that new Donroe doctrine that they're setting up over there with the basically the construction of the technate. Again, I don't think it's going to be exactly the technate. I think, again, they have a map that they're upholding to, kind of like what they did with the World War II situation. But they obviously, Greenland's a part of that. But on top of that, he's going out there and now throwing daggers at South Korea, which we already know South Korea is getting closer and closer to China. He's throwing daggers at Australia and throwing daggers at Japan, which, again, that's going to be interesting to watch, because we know Japan, who is a close ally of Trump, they're starting to make their way over towards China and South Korea and stuff like that, even though they're not friendly with China. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Again, right now, keep an eye on all this stuff when it comes to the geopolitical shifting and how these countries are starting to move from their old alliances towards possibly a different structure, which may have to do with setting up the new districts all around the world, according to whatever design that they have. There's been multiple designs all throughout history. We know there's the Technate one. We know that there's the Club of Rome one. We know that there's the post-World War II one. I'm sure there's other ones that either I haven't seen or haven't been publicly shared yet, but there's obviously a plan to build a new world structure. Okay, let's take a look at what's going on with Hungary and Russia as well. It says Orban and Putin phone call transcript leaked. Hungary mouse will help Russian lion in any matter. And it goes on to say, according to the document, which was the leaked transcript of the phone call between Orban and Putin, according to that document revealed by Bloomberg, there was much courtesy during the phone call between Orban and Putin. Apart from small talk about sports and health, the two leaders discussed a possible American-Russian summit in Budapest following Putin's visit to Alaska. They talked in detail about who would organize the possible meeting in Budapest, and Putin said that he would remain at Orban's disposal, calling the prime minister "my dear Victor." It says, yesterday our friendship rose to such a high level that I can help in any way, Prime Minister Orban reportedly replied to Putin. In any matter where I can be of assistance, I am at your service. He compared Hungary's readiness to help Russia to a folktale in which a mouse helps a lion. He basically called himself a mouse to help the Putin lion. That's pathetic, but that's how puppetry works. So Putin spoke highly of Hungary's independent and flexible stance towards the war in Ukraine. That is why he said Budapest was the only European location acceptable for organizing a meeting with Trump. Okay. So when it comes to this, some interesting developments. We understand that the United States, specifically J.D. Vance, has been on a tear lately, promoting Viktor Orban because they've got elections coming up. And we know Orban is somebody who works closely with Trump. Orban is somebody who works closely with Putin. Putin works closely with Trump. Trump works closely with Putin. I mean, it's the trifecta when it comes to that, especially since Hungary is one of the key dissenters in Europe that causes a lot of problems and causes a lot of fractures when it comes to political agenda over there in that region. And so what's interesting is just lately there's been multiple times that J.D. Vance has been traveling around with Orban. Orban has been on J.D. Vance's plane. Is that Air Force 2? Is that how it works? Vice President gets Air Force 2, President gets Air Force 1. I think that's how it works. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But J.D. Vance, of course, is going out there. He's done political rallies in Hungary in order to promote Orban. Like, he's been invited to speak at these rallies to Hungary citizens to go out there and vote for Orban and move forward with that, because Orban is one of their allies. He's one of the puppets that they can use in Europe to not only help facilitate the Russia agenda, but also the United States agenda, and to cause problems in Europe. So, a couple of you guys saying you think that it's Air Force 2. I think that's it. Yeah. But yeah, so this is, again, showing the reality of, again, something that we've been talking about for a very long time when it comes to the trend that we're watching, that the United States and Russia are working together in order to dismantle the NATO and EU. Again, we're talking a lot about this, and I know that. It's a subject that we're really, really pushing when it comes to this, because there's so much momentum going in that direction right now. At first, it started off pretty quiet. You have to go and find these little nuggets and things like that. But now it's becoming pretty public that this is the plan, that the United States is aligning with Russia, and the United States is trying to dismantle what's going on in Europe. And again, I think what we are going to, maybe not while we're here. I don't believe that we will see it while we're here, because I hold to Matthew 24. We're going to be gone before this stuff happens. But it's still one of those things where I think the West is going to crash. The West is going to collapse. I'm talking United States. I'm talking Canada. I'm talking Mexico. I'm talking Europe. I'm talking Australia. I'm talking these countries. I think they're going to collapse because I still hold to the belief that everything is going to switch, is going to go back to Old Testament style things. Again, the first 69 weeks was all based Old Testament, geographically and supernaturally, and all these things are Old Testament during the first 69 weeks. Then all of a sudden we get a break of the age of grace, the church age that we're currently in right now. Why would things not go back to where they were for that 70th week? Why would they not go Old Testament again? We know God's going to reveal himself supernaturally and get involved to the point where people can recognize him. We understand that there's going to be so much of that Old Testament stuff that doesn't happen now during our church age time that we read it prophetically is going to happen again. So again, we're seeing, if you can see how it works, that the first 69 weeks, Old Testament style, supernatural, geopolitical, geographically, all those things, take a break to the church age where all of that kind of stuff starts settling, different powers ride up. God's not quite involved. He's involved, but not like visually involved like he was. And then all of a sudden you read prophetically, Day of the Lord, things transition back. And I think we're going to see that again. And in order to do that, things have got to completely change here in the West, and things have got to completely rise up over there in the Middle East. And so I think that is a good way. I'm not going to say is the way because we don't know, but I think it's a good way to take a look at what's going on prophetically and where things are trending. And in my opinion, I think it's an angle that's not really looked at, because people, I think for the most part, and this isn't a shot at anybody, but I think people are just trapped in the here and now situation where, well, this is what we have now. This is how things operate now. So obviously that trend is going to continue into the future. Well, are we sure? Are we sure about that? That's the main argument that I hear from people who don't believe that Babylon is Babylon. Well, there's just no way. There's no way that there's enough time for God to lift up Babylon again. And you're the one that tells me that I put God in a box? Come on. Come on. Give him more credit than that. Give him more credit than that. Proton, I think Iran and Turkey are big players with Russia in the future, so don't think they are going anywhere. It is curious, though, that exciting to see all this happening here. Oh, that's why I never said Russia and Iran and Turkey are going to go away. No, I think they're the ones that are going to escalate. It's the West that's going to go down. That's not Russia. That's not Turkey. As it is right now, Turkey's loving this because they're just sitting there not doing anything, gaining a whole bunch of power over there in the Middle East because of what's going on. And we know Turkey's the one that leads Ezekiel 38 into Israel. So that's pretty important. That's pretty important. So again, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not telling you that you have to believe this way. I'm just trying to give you a different way of viewing things, which again, my way of viewing things is so different compared to the norm because I just don't buy into the traditional teaching, especially when the traditional teaching doesn't fit with what is said scripturally. So I think it's a good way to look at something like that. Anyways, that's my perspective on everything. All right. Yeah, I love you guys because I know there's a lot of you guys that see that and it's like you're kind of on board with it because you see the same thing that I see too, and it's awesome. Gotta love the misfits. That's why we're the misfits. We just don't fit. We just don't fit, and I'm okay with that because the only one that I want to fit in with is the Lord. That's for sure. All right. Speaking of geopolitical, this is another one to pay attention to. This would be interesting. Now, this is a case of collect this information, get your hamsters to store it in the filing cabinet, and hang on to it for future stuff, and we'll see if something grows from this. We don't know, but this would be a very interesting shift that goes entirely against the narrative that we've been hearing. And it might be interesting. Taiwan opposition chief arrives in China for peace mission. President calls for talks. So the Taiwan opposition chief is not they're not the ones currently in charge of Taiwan right now. This is, again, the opposition. However, the opposition is in favor of reuniting Taiwan with China, and they've been in talks. They've been working together for a long time. Not always, but they've been working together for a long time. And just recently, the past 3 weeks, I've noticed that there's a few reports coming out from the Taiwan chief. I can't remember her name. It says it in a minute. We'll get to it. Who has publicly come out and said, we need to reunite Taiwan with China for us to regain strength, to remain a factor globally, which is interesting because everybody and their mom is thinking that China is going to take Taiwan, even though there's nothing that really says that they were. That narrative didn't come from China. That narrative came out from Taiwan and Western media. China's just sitting there doing what they've always done, and the narrative's going out there, and it's like, we didn't even say anything, but we're not going to stop this. Because if you guys think this, that means you're just giving us power that we never even put forward. It's interesting because with everything going on right now, China is not doing anything. It's just nothing but narrative and threats of China being pushed by other groups that's giving China all this power. It's pretty interesting. It says Taiwan's opposition leader arrived in China on Tuesday for a peace mission, potential meeting with President Xi Jinping, as Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te reiterated he was open for talks, but the island had the right to chart its own course. Chang Li-woon, chairwoman of the Kuomintang, the KMT, Taiwan's largest opposition party, is traveling at a time of increased Chinese military pressure on Taiwan. Not really. Not based on the information that we know, which Beijing views as its own territory, and as the opposition-dominated parliament stalls a government plan for $40 billion extra in defense spending. So it's Chang Li-woon, who's the KMT chief. She's the leader of the opposition party. She has come out the past 3 weeks and has been very public about reuniting Taiwan with China and making them one again, which is interesting because it's possible in the future something may happen in Taiwan. She takes the position, and all of a sudden Taiwan's back in with China. South Korea's making their way with China. Japan is kind of going that direction. The Philippines and Bangladesh are getting very cozy, and all of a sudden we got an interesting Asian coalition forming over there. So speaking to reporters at her party's headquarters in Taipei before going to the airport, Chang said she was going on a historic journey for peace, but admitted some people felt uneasy about her trip. If you truly love Taiwan, you will seize even the slightest chance, every possible opportunity to keep Taiwan from being ravaged by war, she said. Chang arrived in Shanghai's downtown Hongqiao airport under tightened security and was met by Song Tao, head of China's Taiwan Affairs Office. China, which has never renounced the use of force to bring Taiwan under its control, refuses to speak to President Lai, saying he is a separatist. And that's where maybe this woman steps in. This is the first trip by a KMT leader to China in a decade, though China has yet to confirm whether Xi will definitely meet Chang, who will be in Beijing from Thursday. So interesting development going on with this Taiwan-China situation, with the opposition leader trying to unite them together. This is something to keep in mind. Again, we don't know. We don't know what's going on with this, but interesting nuggets of development that are starting to come out regarding this. So just take it, store it, and we'll see what the future has in regards to this. Something to keep in mind. Okie dokie. All right, let's bring things back to the homeland and get an update on what's going on with NSPM 7. If you guys don't remember, NSPM 7 is a national policy security memorandum that was put out by the Trump administration, something that all administrations do. But it has to do with, it's not an executive order, but it is a policy that must be adopted by the United States government regarding their security detail. And we understand that the NSPF 7 basically turns all those who oppose Trump's politics as domestic terrorists. We've gone over this. I got a video on my channel. Just search up NSPM 7 and you'll find it, and you'll get a big description about what it is. But this is something that we know is implemented. The mainstream media is not really talking about it. They've mentioned it here and there, but for the most part, it's not talked about, and it's something that most people don't realize. But this is something that is, I believe, is being connected to the ICE situation, and it's going to be used to bring down all opposition within the United States when the time comes. It says FBI's new political pre-crime center says, are your views on the list of domestic terrorism indicators? It says President Trump's budget request. We just talked about this. That new budget he wants to bring in, $1.5 trillion. President Trump's budget request to Congress contains the largest counterterrorism spending increase in years, and buried inside it is a new FBI-led center dedicated to proactively hunting Americans and the government classifies as so-called domestic terrorists. The new center and funding boost represent the implementation of Trump's National Security Presidential Memorandum, the NSPM-7. It says now Trump's budget request reveals that the FBI runs a dedicated NSPM-7 Joint Mission Center with personnel from 10 federal agencies, and it is busy proactively identifying domestic terrorists motivated by any of the following beliefs. So if you are anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, whatever that means, extremism on race, whatever that means, extremism on gender, whatever that means, hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on religion, and hostility towards those who hold traditional views on morality. You are officially deemed a domestic terrorist in the United States, and the FBI, with a center of 10 other federal organizations, are watching, surveilling, collecting information on you, and may come and sweep you up, depending on what you say, how you think, and how you operate. Interesting, because I thought this is the only type of stuff that happens in authoritarian fascist regimes, but yet I'm being told that Trump is against all of that stuff. Interesting how that works. And it is indeed connected to the 2027 budget request that's being put through. It says the new center combats these supposed threats by integrating intelligence, operational support, and financial analysis, the budget request says. Its creation appears to be inspired by the murder of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk, an event that reportedly precipitated the formulation of the NSPM-7 in the first place, according to the budget request, which alludes to heinous assassinations having dramatically increased. The budget request also singles out social media as some kind of breeding ground for domestic terrorism, saying domestic terrorists exploit a variety of popular social media platforms, smaller websites with targeted audiences, and encrypted chat applications. They use these platforms to recruit new adherents, plan and rally support for in-person actions, and disseminate materials encouraging radicalization and mobilization to violence. Basically, what they're saying is if you post something that opposes whatever the MAGA government is doing on social media, you are now falling in line with that. You are encouraging radicalization, and you are encouraging the mobilization of violence, and you are bringing in support for these actions and stuff like that, all because you say something that opposes the Trump administration. So you are now a domestic terrorist. It's amazing how that works. So this is what we're currently facing here in the United States. We know that there's different elements of this same policy in Europe and Russia and China and Canada. They all have different versions of this. And, here in the United States, it's one of those things where we got the same situation now being implemented here, where if you oppose what is being done, you are deemed a domestic terrorist. Again, we already got confirmation during the whole ICE situation where one of the ICE agents confirmed to somebody who was filming that he went and took a picture of the person's license plate and said, we're adding you to our terrorist database because you oppose ICE. And again, people will take that to the point of, I heard it all with all the pastors and stuff like that. Well, speaking out against ICE, you're a radical domestic terrorist if you do that. Because you oppose what ICE was doing, which most of what they were doing is unconstitutional and illegal to begin with. You're the very same person that says that you stand by the Constitution, but you are supporting the very same thing that is shredding it because you're being told by Trump to do it. You're one of the people standing in the dark clapping because he told you that the light bulb was changed. That's deception. And that's That's a whole level of deception that most people can't get out of, because it's something that they have so ingrained in themselves, and it's not based on any beliefs. I've said this before. When you follow these politicians like that and you change your stance based on whatever they say, even if it opposes what you actually believe on the inside, you don't actually believe anything. That's where the phrase of, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. That's what it's talking about. You don't actually have any beliefs. You just go along with what you're told by a political leader. And that's dangerous, because then we get stuff like this, the very same thing that you say you oppose, but you're in favor of it, all because you're fighting a culture war with the other side of the political spectrum. It's genius deception. It's brilliant psychological warfare, because it's almost impossible to get out of, which is why the majority of the United States still falls in line with it. Crazy how that works. Let's keep going with the NSPF 7, because we also have this. It says Trump new red square is coming to state and local police near you. They're expanding it to local police offices. It says internal emails show that the FBI is instructing state and local police on how to enforce the president's crackdown on left-wing dissent, or just those who oppose the MAGA Trump administration. It says FBI emails obtained by ZDOs show that the Trump administration is pushing state and local police to target Americans with not even left-wing views, just those who oppose MAGA views, emails show. As Donald Trump's hot war in Iran enters its second month with no end in sight, a quieter, colder war is simmering in the home front. Its target is not foreign power, thousands of miles away, but U.S. citizens who disagree with the president and his hardline advisors. The domestic war's chief weapon is a National Security Presidential Memorandum, NSPM 7, which attempts to criminalize a laundry list of common beliefs and viewpoints that are basically opposing MAGA. It says Trump's FBI is conducting trainings for state and local law enforcement officials on the president's MSPM 7 directive. Again, FBI is conducting trainings for state and local law enforcement officials on the NSPM 7 directive. Again, if you oppose the Trump administration, you are a domestic terrorist, which means the FBI is training the state and local law enforcement to deal with you. And it says, in order to help enlist them in the administration's ongoing crackdown, emails show. And it's happening at the same time as Trump's war in Iran is throttling energy prices and the global economy, creating even more discontent with his administration. What this development means in practice is if you criticize a corporation on social media, held a sign that demands ICE leave your city, shared a meme about the United Healthcare CEO killer, or publicly condemned Trump's Iran war at a local town hall, both the federal government and your local police could take note and forward along a list of your thought crimes to the FBI for further review. Again, for those who don't think that this is actually starting to be deployed, it's not actually happening, it's not actually coming through. Ron DeSantis just signed in legislation that is a state version of exactly this. And again, I've talked about how there's been proof, multiple videos of state and local law enforcement showing up at people's doors, their homes in Florida, for simply stating something against political holdings on social media. There was one that I saw that said something about a mayor in Florida. It said something about a mayor. It wasn't a threat, just disagreement with what the mayor was doing, saying that he was a puppet for so-and-so. I don't remember who it was, some corporation. And local law enforcement, ordered by the mayor, showed up to investigate the person at their door because of what they posted on social media. Then there's another one in Florida where they posted something that was about, I think it was an anti-Semitic thing. Again, it wasn't a threat, just saying that they don't like Israel and what's going on with Israel and stuff like that. And local police showed up at their door to investigate that because of a post on social media saying, we're not here to arrest you. You didn't do anything illegal. We're just here to investigate what you think on these things, and let you know that you got dangerously close to doing something illegal, and make sure that you don't do it again. And we're just trying to gather information on everything, all because somebody posted something that went against the MAGA belief, in this case against the DeSantis belief, and posted it on social media. The same stuff that we've been seeing in Europe, where people post something that's pro-biblical or anti-LGBT and all that stuff, and the police showed up. Same thing is happening here in the United States, all because it has to do with these policies that are coming through, that if you oppose whatever they have politically, you are a threat to them. So for those who said that it's not coming here to the United States, you're wrong. It's already here, and it's getting worse. Now we have this. This just came out today. Iranian-affiliated cyber actors exploit programmable logic controllers across United States critical infrastructure. So this is posted by CISA, which is the Cyber Defense Agency of the United States government, which whenever I see something like that, that tells me that they may be creating an avenue for a false flag in the future and then blame it on Iran. It's possible. Always worth keeping that in mind. And they put out and says they urgently warn U.S. organizations of ongoing cyber exploitation of internet-connected operation technology devices, including Rockwell Automation, Allen Bradley manufactured programmable logic controllers across multiple U.S. critical infrastructure sectors. Organizations from multiple U.S. critical infrastructure sectors experience disruptions through malicious interactions, and in a few cases, this activity has resulted in operational disruption and financial loss. And they say the authoring agencies assess a group of Iranian-affiliated advanced persistent threat actors is conducting this activity to cause disruptive effects within the United States. The group has targeted devices spanning multiple U.S. critical infrastructure sectors, including government services and facilities to local municipalities, water and wastewater systems, and energy sectors. So what they're doing is they're setting up an avenue where they're saying that there is an Iranian cyber threat to United States critical infrastructure, which includes government services, water systems, and energy sectors. So if all of a sudden we got some cyber thing that hits, that shuts down water in part of the country, or hits energy sectors, or government stuff gets taken down, in particular, they may use that to blame it on Iran. Now, with this just came out today, and with the announcement of the ceasefire situation, this could open up the playbook that they can claim, oh, ceasefire has been canceled because Iran did a cyber attack on us, and so now we got to start bombing them again. And that's something that could absolutely be part of the playbook if they so choose to go forward with it. So I don't have much else on that because that just came out today, and it's just not something that we necessarily have more information on, but it is something that I want to make sure that you guys are aware of. So if we do see something like that in the future and we start rolling again with things, again, we're not caught off guard because of the situation currently unfolding. All right. Grab a drink real quick, and then we'll get into the Nutella side of things, shall we? All right. Everybody good? Everybody doing all right? I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you. Don't want to lose anybody. Okay. let's talk. I think Chris used up all the Nutella. Yeah. Chris says, I'm not telling you anything. Nice. You gotta love the puns. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on with this how do I even want to put this? This display of space exploration, space travel, I guess you could say. So I haven't talked much about the whole Artemis 2 thing. Again, most people who have been around my channel know the belief that I hold to. I don't believe that we're able to get past lower Earth's orbit. I don't think we're able to get past the Van Allen belt. Don't believe so. I do not believe that we have been to the moon. I don't believe that that was real in any type of way. I know there's a lot of people that instantly get angry as soon as anybody says that they have that opinion. I don't know why. I don't get angry if somebody says that if we did land on the moon. It's like, okay, you believe that? That's cool. Whatever. I don't believe that we can. And so I don't believe that this is legitimate either. I don't believe that the whole trip, and they said it's the longest trip because they're going around the moon this time. And so they've apparently made history, and it's the farthest out that anybody's ever been in space. And again, I don't believe that we've done that. But adding on to all of this is fascinating because I saw this and it was something like straight out of the Truman Show movie. And if you guys have seen the Truman Show, you understand what I mean, where they trick a dude into believing that he's living in the real world, but everything is fake. And there's a director above him and all that stuff. If you haven't seen the movie, it's worth checking out because a lot of what's going on today is very similar to that movie. I haven't done one of these in a long time. But I did a Showtime episode where I break down both on the technical and the religious elements of movies, predictive programming of movies, and I did something on the Truman Show. And so if you haven't seen that, go check it out. Again, I break it down because the Truman Show, while people focus on the fake reality of it and they focus on the technology and the surveillance aspect of it, the entire movie is built around a Gnostic structure of being locked in a prison world until you become enlightened and can leave and ascend out of it. And so there's a whole element to that. Again, go check it out. I have it on my I believe it's on YouTube, and I know it's on Rumble, so you guys can go check that out if you want to. But I saw this, and it says, lone jar of Nutella drifts around the cabin of moon spacecraft. And a NASA spokesperson said that this is not a product placement. It's interesting because right in the video, a big old jar of Nutella comes through, and the label perfectly shows itself to the camera like it's something straight out of a movie. And so I actually have the video clip here that I'll play for you guys so you guys can see what I'm talking about if you haven't seen it.
WretchedWatchmen and Jeremy Hansen will be up first to capture imagery and record audio on the portable computing devices. You hear those referred to as PCBs.
This is the live
while Victor and
video.
Christina serve as the support members. The crew will switch.
This is the live video feed, and it just happens. Boom. It's like perfect product placement because of this. And it's amazing. Now, we don't have time to go over all the stuff. I've been seeing things as it comes in regarding this. There's things that don't make sense. Like you see the shadow of people's hands, but you don't see the shadow of an object floating in front of them. There was the whole thing with how there's supposed to be a 9-second delay between Trump's phone call with the people up in space, and then all of a sudden they can hear each other without a delay, which again doesn't make any sense. The camera feed on the outside of the craft is much lower quality than the camera feed on the inside of the craft, and they say that because they say it's because of the the distance of how they have to feed the bandwidth from the video cameras. But if that was true, why are you getting better resolution from the inside cameras than the outside cameras? Again, your explanation doesn't make sense. It's a whole bunch of stuff that, again, adds a whole lot of questions to everything revolving this. But this is by far one of the most ridiculous things that I've seen is the live camera. And they just happen to have perfect shot of Nutella coming through. It's one of those things where, again, if you do believe that we can go to space and we've been on the moon and this is all legit and stuff like that, you still got to look at some of these things coming out and go, seriously? Because it should still give you a eyebrow raise on this. And it says, we were watching with bated breath as the crew of the NASA historic Artemis 2 mission became the furthest any humans have ever ventured from the Earth. Sharing the momentous occasion was a lone jar of Nutella hazelnut spread, which could be seen floating through the cabin around 4 minutes before breaking the record that was previously set by NASA's Apollo 13 mission in 1970. So this just happens to be minutes before the record set on a feed where there's millions of people watching. So what do? You send a jar of Nutella right through the screen with the label dead center. You can't miss it. Again, you should be raising an eyebrow even if you think it's legitimate. And they say, in other words, while their toilet may continue to act up, their toilet is apparently broken twice on this. It's amazing. Have you guys noticed how there's always toilet problems? The USS Ford aircraft carrier had to go port away from Iran to fix a toilet malfunction. And now the Artemis 2 has had 2 toilet malfunctions. Again, things that just should make you say, It says, in other words, while their toilet may continue to act up and they're forced to sleep in a cocoon-like sleeping bags during their 10-day mission, they at least didn't have to miss out on their Nutella. It says, Nutella just got an ultimate space ad provided by the Artemis 2 crew. Another user tweeted. Some netizens accused NASA of staging the condiment's brief appearance, calling it product placement. I'm one of those people. But NASA shut down the rumor, and with agency press secretary Bethany Stevens telling Futurism in a statement that NASA does not select crew meals or food in association with brand partnership. Doesn't mean that they're not going to send them through the video feed when millions of people are watching it. Interesting. Now, if you guys don't know, here's a couple of clips. I got these clips online that show product placement in the world of Truman. So there's cameras all over that are following Truman around, who's Jim Carrey, and he does not realize that he's living in a fake world because he was born in a fake world and he's grown up in this world where everybody's an actor. His entire life is caught on camera. There's a director up in the moon and he directs all this stuff, but there's product placement because they don't have commercials. And so they have to have product placement going on. And again, what you saw with the Artemis is very similar to what happens in this movie. Let's see here.
How are you guys? Beautiful day, isn't it?
Always.
And how's your lovely wife?
So the actor shows up. I have to pause it. Otherwise, this might actually get taken down for copyright problems. But basically, one of the actors pushes him in front of the Kaiser Chicken ad in order to get a camera angle on both Truman and Kaiser Chicken because it's product placement and they get paid for it. There's this one where his actor wife shows up and does an ad read.
Look what I got free at the checkout. It's a Chef's Pal. It's a dicer, grater, peeler, all in one. Never needs sharpening, dishwasher safe.
And bad angle because he can, anyways. But basically she shows up and is trying to basically tell Truman what she got. But ultimately what it is she's doing an ad read to the camera right in front of everybody watching. There's several other ones on here. We won't go through all of them. But this one is in particular where he's having a crisis because he thinks he's living in a fake world. And so she does an ad read for him.
Why don't you let me fix you some of this new Mococo drink? All natural cocoa beans from the upper slopes of Mountain Nicaragua, no artificial sweeteners.
And so, again, it's one of those things when you're living in Truman's world, you're always being watched. Everything is fake. Everything is a deception. And they have product placement everywhere. And so when you see, again, with an Artemis trip around the moon, where there's so many questions that already shows that it may in fact be fake, which again, I don't believe that it is real. And they happen to have a Nutella jar float right through the camera for everybody to see who's watching just mere minutes before they break the record, the furthest any human has ever been. For those who understand the fakeness of the world that we live in, that should raise questions. Don't you think? Don't you think that we should be asking a question? Not only that, but they chose April 1st to launch towards the moon. That was their launch date. April 1st. And then you have all of these things lining up with it. Again, if you're one of those people that still believes that it's a legit thing, cool. I'm not going to hold that against you. I'm not one of those people. It's like, if you think it's legit, that's fine. I know a lot of people that I'm friends with that still believe that we've been to the moon. Cool. All I'm asking is just take a moment and kind of look at just the few little things that I presented. It's not much. I know it's not much. But just think for a moment and go, maybe this is a little weird. Maybe some of this stuff's a little too coincidental. And just think about that. That's all I'm saying. Especially because we live, again, in a world where everything around us is trying to deceive us. Everything. And the Lord warned us and said, when we're in these times, the first thing I want you to pay attention, take heed. Do not be deceived. The deception is going to be off the charts. And to me, I think we need to put, while that is said so often by Christians and those in the church, I think we all need to place just a little bit more weight in that warning by Christ. Because there's so many people, specifically those in prominent positions of teaching, that they just take whatever they think is true and just throw it out there as it's legit. Like I was just saw something the other day that it was just, well, we know for a fact that Trump wasn't connected to the Epstein. And so there's a chance that Trump still may release those files. And I'm just sitting there going, you are out of your mind if you think that's true. Why do you believe that? Because Trump told you? You're just going to go along with it? Because I know you're a Trumper. Or there was just today, what was it? Tom Hughes had Jimmy Evans on his show. And I just for one moment, because I was curious, I clicked on the video, and the first thing I heard was Jimmy Evans talking about AI, saying there's nothing wrong with using AI if you use it the right way. And I instantly turned it off. I was like, that's great. Cool. Not only do you have Jimmy Evans on there, who protected his child molester, Pastor Robert Morris, helped cover that up and keep it a secret, but then you have him on there saying that AI is cool to use. It's like, this is what we're battling. This is what we're battling. And these people are prominent people who are leading others to destruction. Because It's okay. Why? Because I think it is. And that's what they base everything off of. So just be careful. Plus, we have this. Artemis astronauts to study the moon's surface using mainly their eyes. So with all the technological advancement that we have in the world, and it's been how long since we've launched people up by the moon? What do? Rather than loading up on some type of super telescope recorder thing, whatever you want to, I'm not a space expert, but I'm sure they got one of those that they can fit in there. They're going to go ahead and just study the moon with their eyes. This is more than 50 years after humans first flew around the moon. Artemis astronauts will repeat the feat on Monday and use the most basic instrument to study it, their eyes. Despite the technological advancements since the Apollo missions, NASA still relies on the eyesight of the astronauts to learn more about the moon. The human eye is basically the best camera that could ever or will ever exist. Kelsey Young, the lead scientist for the Artemis II mission, told AFP. So again, with all the technology that we have, they're not going to put something in or on that thing in order to get a crazy amount of detail regarding the moon. They're just going to go off of the account of what the astronauts saw with their own eyes. Interesting. Again, just something to make you think, to make you question, to make you ponder on what's really going on. Sticking with deception, we have a thing now called silicon sampling, and it's going to ruin public opinion polling. So we already know polls, whether they're surveys or whether they're voting polls, are rigged to begin with. Then we already know that AI lies and is wrong and hallucinates. What happens when you combine the two? Well, that's when you get silicon sampling. This is a recent Axios story on maternal health policy referenced findings that a majority of people trusted their doctors and nurses. On the surface, there's nothing unusual about that. What originally wasn't mentioned, however, was that these findings were made up. Clicking through the links revealed, as did a subsequent editor's note and clarification by Axios, that the public opinion poll was a computer simulation run by the artificial intelligence startup Aru. No people were involved in the creation of these opinions. The practice Aru used is called silicon sampling, and it's suddenly everywhere. The idea behind silicon sampling is simple and tantalizing. Because large language models can generate responses that emulate human answers, polling companies see an opportunity to use AI agents to simulate survey responses at a small fraction of the cost and time required for traditional polling. So, I'll give you an example. You know how, like, whenever you watch like a commercial for a toothbrush commercial, and it says 9 in 10 dentists approve of this toothbrush. We're at the point now where they don't even need to actually go to 10 dentists and ask them about this toothbrush. They run it through an AI polling simulation that gives them that, which means they have now satisfied the check mark for legality, and they didn't even ask an actual human being. They just ran it through an AI simulation. That's what's going on with this. So they're talking about a story about maternal health that said that the majority of people trusted their doctors and nurses. But the problem is they never actually polled any human being about if they trusted their doctor or nurse. They ran it through an AI simulation, took that and said that represents what the humans actually think based on prediction and algorithm, and then posted it saying that it was humans that said this. We already know that there are AI bots commenting on videos and social media posts. We already know that there's AI bots leaving reviews for products on things like Amazon and other online storefronts. We already know that there's AI bots that are writing recommendations and reviews and top 10 lists online regarding products and everything like that. This all has to do with AI now taking the position of human thought and opinion based upon simulated prediction and posting it as humans are actually reviewing or giving their opinion on something. And now this is to the point of, I mean, again, you already know that AI was involved with a lot of things, a lot of information giving that was incorrect. And we already know that survey polls and whatnot are untrustworthy at best. Now we have a mixture of both of them occurring. It says, but this undermines the very idea of the opinion poll. Public opinion is used to guide policy, politics, and social science, and it has value only insofar as it summarizes the beliefs and opinions of actual humans. Using simulations of human opinions in place of the real thing will only worsen or our broken information ecosystem and sow distrust. So basically, they're even writing it saying, you can't believe this stuff anyways. Now it's only going to make it worse. Not to mention, I don't know if you guys saw this, but the report came out, this was like a month or two ago, that AI bots now outnumber humans online. I don't know if you guys saw this or not. So there's more AI bots communicating online than actual humans communicating online. If you guys don't remember, this was a thing that was predicted, man, this was a long time ago, called dead internet theory, where you're going to get to a point where there's going to be more inhumane activity inhuman activity online than there's going to be actual human activity online. We've reached it. Some people thought that that was just a theory that was never going to actually happen, and it happened. So we are in dead internet position. Says silicon sampling makes these problems worse. The computational whiz kids behind silicon sampling are so excited about AI that they will insist that their complex predictive computer simulations are accurate because they are trained on what's been observed in the past. Therefore, they excel at simulating human behavior in the present and predicting what's next. The method might sound absurd, we certainly think it is, and that makes matters worse. There's plenty of evidence that it doesn't produce particularly reliable results. A recent study that hasn't been peer-reviewed yet suggests that the biases that skew polls skew silicon sampling numbers even more strongly. The further from people we get, the more the simulation becomes a mirror of the pollsters' beliefs. Nonetheless, the AI modelers are pushing ahead, and there's a lot of money behind them. Ipsos is working with Stanford University, it says, to pioneer the use of AI and synthetic data in market and public opinion research by creating digital twins, virtual representations of real-world survey respondents. Gallup has partnered with Silicon Sampler, Simile, to create 1,000 AI-generated digital twins for clients. Gallup, all those Gallup polls that we get, where we learn so much about how people think and the public opinion on all these things. Gallup does all these things. Yeah, they're using AI now. So all those survey numbers that you get, just throw them out. You couldn't believe them before, but you certainly can't now, especially since many of them are going to be AI opinions. It says CVS, whose venture capital arm has invested in Simile, has also partnered with the startup to answer questions about its customers. The companies that offer the service are proliferating with hundreds of millions of dollars in funding from some of the biggest firms in Silicon Valley. They promise believable proxies of human behavior for anyone who needs to check what people might think before acting. Market research is perhaps the largest sector in which silicon sampling will be used, since it will make starting a business that much more cheaper. It says, what happens when these surveys tell us relative levels of support in the open Democratic nomination field for 2028? To wit, Aru ran a full simulation of the U.S. 2024 presidential election on the eve of Election Day. Kamala Harris won narrowly. So what happens if you take a rigged AI system and you plug it into the political polling system, how easy can that be manipulated in order to control much more easily control political outcomes in the world? How can this AI system be plugged into the beast system in the coming future when it comes to the entire one world system that's going to be developed? How will this all be used in accordance with it? Interesting. All fake AI people. Speaking of algorithms and media, we have this. Kalshi forecasts coming to Fox News as prediction market strikes deal with cable news leader. The prediction market already has deals with CNN and CNBC. So as we know, Kalshi, we talk about this, Kalshi and Polymarket are prediction-based betting systems. And so basically they can take anything in the real world, even something like, will a Iranian missile drop in Israel today? And you can bet on that. And it all has to do with prediction markets. And so what these prediction markets are doing, which by the way, Donald Trump Jr. sits on and has funded both of them, sits on the board and has funded both of them, both Polymarket and Kalshi. What they're doing is they're plugging into mainstream media now. So Kalshi is connected with CNN, CNBC, and now Fox. And so the prediction market, which people can bet on real life events, are now going to be plugged into what's happening in the media. First of all, people use these prediction markets. You'll see that they even have like Twitter accounts and stuff like that to put out breaking news, which most of them have been proven to be false because it's all about getting people on their betting market to get them to bet on real life situations. We're at a point now where you have AI that is altering real world events. You have AI that is now giving information and breaking news stories and writing quote unquote journalistic stories out for the real world to talk about, all of which are manipulated and or just false to begin with. And then you have prediction betting markets that have opened up where you can bet on anything in the world, and people are gathering information from manipulated AI systems that are creating and reporting on things happening in the world, and then people place money to bet on this thing. This is what I'm talking about, where your entire reality is now fake. It's entirely false. AI manipulates the real world. AI reports on the manipulation of the real world like it's a real world event, and then you can place bets on this stuff. You know how easy it is to manipulate the world, how easy it is to manipulate society's mindset when you have AI controlling world reporting and then prediction-based markets. This is how bad the deception of this world has gotten. Nothing is real. And I know there's some people that said, you can't say that. You can't put on this tinfoil hat and say nothing is real. You sound like one of those crazy people from the X-Files and stuff like that. But I'm telling you, when you look at what is really going on, what is moving society forward in today's world, you have the table, the shadow government that puppeteers entire countries in order to move their agenda forward. Then you have AI that is manipulating real world events and reporting on these things so people can place bets on what is really not happening. All the meanwhile, under the cover, the Luciferian agenda is moving forward. So this idea that you're one of those people, and I get it, I get it every once in a while. I used to get it all the time, but not so much now, but still, I get it all the time. You're one of those people that you sit there and say you can't believe in anything. The only thing that you can believe in is Jesus Christ. That's it. And that's not one of those things, because I know there's some people that say that. They go about the believers, they go about their lives and stuff like that. Says, oh, the only thing that you can believe is Jesus Christ. And then they'll go and sit down with their friend. Well, did you see that Trump is talking about this and that this happened and stuff? I know, I can't believe that happened. Why are you believing that? You just said that the only thing you can believe is Christ. but yet you believe that this manipulation is real. This is the world that we live in. Reality is no longer reality. Reality is fiction. It really is. There's actually three different realities currently taking place in front of our very eyes. Now, there's some people that might sit there and go, whoa, dude, now you're starting to get into like mystic stuff. No, I'm not getting into mystic stuff. Hear me out. There's three different realities taking place. There's the reality of the false narrative that we as plebs, as peasants in this world, get, that is completely manipulated by the media, by AI, and by prediction. Then there's the reality of the Luciferian cabal that under the cover of that, they're able to manipulate real world events in order to move forward towards that beast system. Those are two. The third reality, which is the real reality, is the one that is the spectrum, the dimension that God currently sits in. That's the real reality. That's what reality actually is, because that is what is true. That is what is right. That is what is holy. That is what is just. It's where God exists, his realm. Those are the three realities. Only one is true. But we operate under the cover of two false ones. But we place our faith in the real one as we go through. I hope that makes sense. I could expand on that further. We don't necessarily have time, but hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what we're currently dealing with here. Three different realities, only one is true. Thankfully, the one that is true is in control of the other two that are fake. Hopefully that makes sense. I can see some people heads are spinning. A couple of people are freaking out. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. But this is the world that we live in. It's crazy. Let's keep going with this. The biggest prediction market in the U.S. is teaming up with the biggest TV news channel in the United States. Kalshi, the betting platform that lets users put their money on the line to predict the outcome of the real world, real world events, from elections and sporting events to unemployment rates, Oscar winners, and updates to the Iran war, has inked a wide-ranging deal with Fox Corp that will see its forecast integrated into Fox News, Fox Business Network, Fox One, and Fox Weather. If you think those who think that the truth comes from Fox is bad now, just wait until they start getting this stuff in there. Kalshi has been aggressive about inking deals with media partners. It has similar arrangements with both CNN and CNBC, with the goal to get Kalshi branded forecasts and predictions on screen. Viewers may be tempted to join and trade based on that placement. It's a paid product placement. Truman Show, Nutella up in space, Kalshi on Fox News. It is a paid product placement, albeit one that connects to editorial. A source says Fox will not be using Kalshi data for election coverage, as the channel has its own polling and election teams. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. It says more people are watching Kalshi's forecasts than trading them, which says a lot. Our data effectively complements news and polls. What were we just talking about? How there's silicon sampling, which is replacing human polls with AI-driven ones? And that this prediction market that you can bet on things is based on news and polls. Amazing how everything all plugs in together to create a false world to exist in. But media companies have found prediction markets to be an intriguing news source of revenue and data. Prediction markets have quickly become an essential data point and a compelling new experience across our live content portfolio, said Paul Cheeseborough, CEO of Tubi Media Corp. By integrating Kalshi's new real-time data into our fast-growing streaming platform, Fox One, and across Fox News Media's leading networks, we're giving audiences both deeper insights and more engaging way to follow the stories that matter most. The false ones that drive up prediction market betting and AI manipulation. Simple as that. All right, we got one more thing take a look at what's going on. We're going to go up to Canada, the Great White North. And this is something I've been watching. I've talked about it a couple times. We don't talk about it too often because it's still making its way through things. But this is worth going over now because it's getting dangerously close to being introduced. And it says, Bill C-9, the Combating Hate Act, has passed in the White House of Commons. Or the White House, sorry, my bad. In the House of Commons, blah. What changes now? So, the C-9 bill, I'm not an expert on this thing, and I'm not going to pretend like I know how the Canadian government and all the legislation and stuff works there. So, I'm not one of those people that I'm like pretend to be an expert on this. I'm not. What I do know about the C-9 bill is it is a extremely dangerous a thought crime bill that if anybody says anything that upsets them, hurts their fifis, and the government agrees with that person who got offended, they can deem it as hate speech and start punishing those going against them. That includes anybody who speaks out in religious texts. That includes Christians who speak on the Bible and oppose things like those who are trying to alter traditional marriage or the gender situation. That includes people who utilize religious texts for whatever their beliefs are, whatever, depending on what it is, whether it's like you're part of the Lutheran side of things or Mormon or whatever it is. If they say anything that opposes what the government, the Canadian government doesn't want you to do, they can start going after you. And as we know, most of the Canadian government is filled with the woke mob, to say the least. And so this is something that can indeed start causing serious problems for Bible believers up in Canada. But there's also another element to this that I want to go over as well, because it's another tippy-toe step towards something that I think may play in the future. We'll get to that in a second. It says, I always want to say Canada. It's just what it is. Canada's mainstream Jewish advocacy groups have applauded the government's passage of Bill C-9 with a 186 to 137 vote in the House of Commons on Wednesday night, March 25th. It now goes to the Senate for further debate and a vote. So this is on their thing, the C-9 bill, and it currently made its way through the House of Commons and is now at the Senate. And they just completed their first reading on March 26th. They've got their second reading that they're still planning to do. It says, for more than 2 years, Jewish communities across Canada have faced escalating threats, intimidation, and violence. This is straight from Canadian Jewish News, which, again, I think plays in a part with something. We'll talk about it. Jewish communities across Canada have faced escalating threats, intimidation, and violence. Bill C-9 represents an important and necessary step to strengthen tools for law enforcement and prosecutors to protect targeted communities and hold criminals accountable, said a joint statement signed by the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, the Alliance of Canadians Combating Anti-Semitism, B'nai B'rith Canada, Canadian Women Against Anti-Semitism, Canadian Jewish Law Association, and the Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center. While C-9 is a significant step forward, it is not the end of the work, the statement read. We must also ensure robust, consistent enforcement of existing laws, improve transparency in prosecutorial decisions, enhance support for community security, and tackle the drivers of radicalization in Canada. Unchecked anti-Semitism, religiously and ideologically motivated extremism, and violent anti-Israel activism. So, the reason why I'm bringing this up on a Jewish news platform is because while this is also going to be going after the believers and those who also follow other religions in Canada, this is also being used to introduce something that we've already seen happen here in the United States, which has to do with creating this barrier for anybody who says anything negative about Israel. And the reason why that's significant, and I want to talk about this, is because I think it's leading towards slowly creeping towards what I think eventually will be introduced as the Noahide laws in the future. And so what this bill is adding is It's creating an offense of willfully promoting hatred against any identifiable group that by displaying certain symbols in a public space. Repeal the defense based on the expression of opinions on religious subjects or texts in relation to the offenses of willful promotion of hatred or anti-Semitism. The bill specifically points out anti-Semitism, and we've seen multiple bills put through in the United States that are doing the same thing. And also fascinating, and I talked about this was last year, I think. Yeah, I think it was like February last year. I talked about this, where the Sanhedrin came forth and said that Trump has the duty to create an international divine court, which has to do with setting up a global court system based upon the Noahide laws, which will be both judge or all three judge, jury, and executioner for anybody who doesn't follow it. And this is where we start getting into interesting things, because what are the 7 Noahide laws? The 7 Noahide laws are rules that all of us must keep, regardless of those, or regardless of who we are or where we come from. This has to do with getting everybody to follow these 7 rules, even those who are not part of the Judaism religious sect, and anybody who goes against these laws, specifically Christians who speak that Jesus Christ is Lord, can be beheaded or will be beheaded based upon their own Sanhedrin rules based upon the Talmud. And we know the Talmud is the mystic Judaism side of things. And so the first rule is do not profane God's oneness in any way. Acknowledge that there's only one God who cares about what we are doing and desires that we take care of the world. What that specifically means is, as we know, Jesus Christ is not God to them. So for us Christians who declare Jesus Christ to be God, we would actually be going against the first Noahide law, and we would be receiving capital punishment, which would be beheading for saying such a thing. And the Sanhedrin has placed that duty upon Trump. They announced that February of 2025 that he needs to set up an international divine court in order to establish these Noahide laws globally. And it's interesting that the beheadment for those who speak the name of Jesus Christ as God is something that we could see and read into when it comes to the scriptures in the future, when the Antichrist goes to behead anybody who does not declare him God, which is pretty fascinating. And so this is worth paying attention to when it comes to the legislation being pushed through like this, because underneath all of this, again, the main thing that you're going to be seeing for anybody reporting on this is the push of the religious texts, or those who have a religious belief that opposes what the Jewish government wants to do. And that's the main thing that's being pushed. When I did a search on this, I like to do this. I'll just go and search this and just go through 10, 15, 20 different websites, news agencies that are reporting on it. And most of them are reporting on that same trend. But buried underneath is this anti-Semitic push. Specifically, all of these Jewish organizations are approving of this bill that is significantly bad for Christians, but the Jewish crowd is pushing this forward because it has all the anti-Semitism and the Jewish promotion stuff all wrapped up in it. And we've been seeing this trend happen that is pointing towards the introduction of Noahide laws, which we don't know for sure is going to be something in the future. But when you look at the structure of how the Antichrist is going to operate, and under the guise of what's being operated, plus what the Sanhedrin and the divine court and the rules stated with it, they kind of match up. And again, we don't know that that's what's going to happen in the future, but it's definitely something that could play a part in the future. And so this is why I think it would be wise, as we see these things happen, to see if this is a very subtle way of continuing to push those Noahide laws forward, which is beheadment of Christians who declare Jesus Christ to be Lord. Something that is going to happen in that beast system in the future. Could these be one and the same? Maybe. Could the Antichrist set up a similar structure that's not connected to these, however, that still comes down with the same punishment? That's also possible too. Either way, we know that there's going to be beheadment of those who do not bow to the Antichrist in the future. And the scripture does indeed confirm that. So this is important. This is important. Just keep that in mind. So again, for those in Canada, that bill is moving forward. It's dangerous in many ways. So just keep an eye on it. With all that being said, for those around here, we proudly proclaim that Jesus Christ is God. And he is, because the scripture confirms it. Our faith is in him, and his sacrifice, death, burial, and resurrection does not mean anything if he's not. But we know that he is, and we have life and salvation because of that. And it's through Jesus Christ's gospel, which is simple as A, B, C. A, you admit that you're a sinner. The act of repentance, metanoia, changing your mind, turning from self to Christ, is the first step to belief. Because how can you believe in Jesus Christ as your Savior if you don't first understand why? And it's through that repentance, the admittance of falling short and being sinful, that allows you to truly believe in Jesus Christ as your Savior. Jesus Christ is the one and only begotten Son of God, that he came down 100% man, 100% God. And he lived the perfect sinless life, the spotless lamb, which means he was the only one qualified to carry the sins of the world, your sin, my sin, upon his shoulders. A pain that I believe is actually much worse than the crucifixion he suffered, carrying that much sin for us. And he took our place upon that cross, and he was crucified and he died. But because there's power in the blood of Jesus Christ, a divine God power in his blood, he defeated death and rose again. For all who believe in him shall not perish, but live forever in his presence and in his glory. The glory is his. He did it, lest no man should boast. And so we place our faith in him. We place our faith in his death, burial, and resurrection. We place our faith in that spilled blood. And we place our faith in the finished work for us that he did upon that cross. And see, as we call upon the Lord, when we receive salvation, we are indwelt with the Holy Spirit, and we are given a supernatural gift of prayer that allows us to go directly to our Father at any moment of any day and speak directly to him. Such an incredible gift. Underutilized. I will be the first one to say that I do not pray enough, because he tells us to never cease praying. And we say, Lord God, thank you. Thank you, God, for allowing us, even though this is a dark, disorienting, deceitful world that we live in. It's truly a blessing to be able to witness this time. A time that you told us was going to come, and it continues to progress even further towards those prophetic events that you have told us in your scripture will come. They've already happened for you, but they're coming here in the future. God, strengthen us, embolden us, give us the endurance to continue to be warriors for your name, ambassadors to the name of Christ. Help us to see through the deception. Give us the words in order to witness to those and warn others of what is going on. And give us the wisdom to be able to speak the gospel according to what people need to hear in order to give their life to your Son, Jesus Christ. And we say, Lord Jesus, please come soon. Maranatha. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. What do we got for questions? Looks like we got a couple here. Let's see here. The Hyler's question. Zach, did you hear anything about the China-Iran railway corridor? Strategic overland rail route linking China to Iran, primarily via Central Asia. That's up there. It's not getting as much media coverage, but it's up there with the Iraq Developmental Road or the Iraq Silk Road and the IMEC corridor. That's one of the other ones that's connected with those trade routes that are becoming much more prominent and much more important for the whole global trade region. That's why those things are getting built so quickly and so significantly. There's so much money and emphasis being put on those because those are needed in order to progress the future trade situation. The Strait of Hormuz caused more pressure to be put on those to build them forward, which again, you'll notice all those trade routes all have to do with taking place in Old Testament geographical locations. China, not so much, obviously, but the fact that that's connecting and going through there, it's all has to do with going back to those geographical locations. So I don't have much more information regarding that particular railway, but that is a part of those three major trade routes that are having so much pressure put on them. So pretty interesting. 1 second. All right. Let's see here. Dallas Rosendahl, do you know the names of the alleged Air Force pilots who were shot down in Iran? I do not. I do not know their names. I don't know if their names were released. If they were, I did not see them, so I do not have those names. Trisha Hammock question, what happens to the people who are in debt when the dollar crashes? I would just be throwing out some type of theory on that one. I think what's going to happen personally, this is just my perspective. I'm not saying that this is how it's going to operate, but I think what's going to happen is when they finally do crash the financial system, they're going to introduce the new one. They're going to entice people saying your debt has been wiped clean. We're resetting everybody. Get involved. We'll get you set up with this digital currency. They'll get everybody hooked on there, everybody connected, and then that's when they'll be able to start tightening down the grip on everything. They're going to entice people as saying that everything has been wiped out, clean slate. Come join this new system, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's what's going to get people hooked on to that. I don't think they're going to hold people's debt over them anymore, especially since the entire financial system, global financial system, is going to be reset into something brand new. So everything will be wiped clean. I think that's what will happen. Do I have anything that I can bring up and prove that's how it's going to happen? I don't. I'm just basing off of the trend that I've seen, and I think that's the best way that they're going to get this all going. That's just my perspective. That's all I can give you. Fiona Fap question, do we have any evidence that Nutella manufacturers have contributed to NASA programs? I don't know. I haven't looked, so I'm not sure. If they're doing product placement, then there's probably money that exchanged hands. Proton Girl question, how does Islam fit in with the possibility of future Noahide laws? Your opinion? I stand by, I've said this before and I stand by it. I think in the future, Islam is going to be practically wiped out. While Islam is connected to the mystery religion, it was birthed from the harlot back in Babylon, and it still holds to some of the main belief points of Gnosticism. It's one that just doesn't quite fit with the others, and so it needs to be struck out to the point where maybe it's not entirely gone, but it's not going to have the foothold that it currently has right now. And so I think in the future, somehow, some way, I have ideas on possibilities, but I'm not going to get into it right now. Islam is going to be almost entirely eliminated. I think it has to be. I do believe that. So, okay, that is all we got for questions. Yes, that's all we got. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate you hanging out. And usual spiel, if you guys can like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. And liking, sharing, and subscribing in this day and age and how all this technology stuff works. I hate it, but it's how it works. Liking, sharing, and subscribing does help reach other people who are trying to find out what is going on, and it gives us the opportunity to share the gospel with them. So please like, share, subscribe if you would be so kind. Be kind, please rewind. Anyways, and then you can also follow along on Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back up live streaming over on Rumble. So make sure to follow over there if you're if you have that platform. And then Telegram and post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format. So I just kind of throw some stuff up there. So if you have Rumble, Telegram, feel free to follow along if you want to. If not, no worries. Just make sure you bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything happening with the Wretched Watchmen world of things. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams, the announcement page, the free book to download, which again, if you haven't read that, go check it out. Eden the End, Mystery Religion of Revelation 17. Go check that out. And it's free, and then you can find all that stuff on the website. And then last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and Gifts and Go. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. We don't do paywalls, subscriptions, memberships, or any of that type of stuff. I run solely off of your guys' donations. So again, you guys are the ones that make this run. You guys are the ones that make this work, and I cannot thank the Lord enough for your guys' support through donations and prayers. So thank you guys. I appreciate and love all of you guys. So, all right, that's it. Thank you for joining me, and have a great week. Continue to be bold for the Lord. Remember that we are surrounded where everything is deceiving and lying to us, and we need to make sure that we keep that in the forefront of our mind as we go through everyday life and just try and question these things and everything like that. It's so important. And yeah, continue to keep your focus on, of course, the truth, which is Jesus Christ. All right, guys. Catch you guys later. Have a good week, I guess. Peace out. Maranatha.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.